2 pages. Yeah, no. No. Got me. Are you ready, Vic? Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask you all to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the meeting to order and establish quorum and proof of notice.
I'll call the roll. President Don Wells.
Here.
Vice President Marilyn Stout. Here. Second Vice President Al Roper. Here. Treasurer Bill Todd. Here. Secretary Molly Knotts, I'm here. Director Ron Spooner.
Here.
And Director Scott DeFilippis.
Here.
All members are present this evening.
Has been established.
Okay. Resident comments.
Tamara Billick.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. My name is Tamara Bilisic, and I live at 2639 Vareo Court. I'm also here as the neighborhood liaison for Vareo Court. I'm speaking under the topic of reserve items and also Taylor Morrison litigation. I'm not really sure where this falls. Pardon me for that. I'm speaking about the drainage issues along the fence line, and I'm going to leave these with you to look at later. There continues to be an issue with the drainage along the fence line with years of mulch piling up where there used to be grass, and this is a terrible problem. We're having awful areas of standing water, which is posing a problem when we'd like to know when this is going to be taken care of. In addition to that, we as homeowners are very concerned with the question of who does this fence line belong to? And I would like to leave with you our survey documents that we got during settlement. I have 2 that I have in this folder, copies of, and it very clearly states on these documents that the fence is back behind our actual property line, and it's written, and these are legal documents. In addition to that, I have copies from December 2nd of 2016 from the Lee County Property Appraisal Office, aerial views of Vareo Court, and it shows actual photographs from the city manager's office showing my side of Vareo Court, the first part that was built before those other lands were developed, where you can actually see a photograph of the fence and where our property lines are drawn, which coincides with our survey document line, which shows that the fence is not on our property. I'm bringing this up now because there is a concern in proper planning long-term for our reserve funds, that if there is another issue with a storm and some of that fence comes down, that we have reserve funds to take care of that fence. So I'm going to leave these document copies with you, and I'm asking that this be looked at legally, because the property owners along the fence line on Vareo Court are very concerned about this matter.
Can I have this?
Yes.
And why don't you email me tomorrow and let's sit down and meet on this. And I'd like to do it like either tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah.
Like, meet with you soon on this. All right.
I know
Thanks.
it is, the vinyl fence. The vinyl fence.
Thank you. We didn't have anybody else on the agenda. Is there anyone else that didn't sign up that would like to speak to an agenda item?
This is agenda item.
Sorry? Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay, am I on? Sound like.
Don broke it.
Can you see it now? It's right by my lip. That's right on top. Okay. That'll never work. How about that? I don't think that's me. I don't think that's me. Yeah, there is. It's not me. Okay, how about now? Do you hear it? I don't hear it. Oh. Okay. All right, I'm going to do my president's report. Oh, that's right. We were doing the
Approval of
approval of
minutes.
the minutes.
I
Down
move that
everyone-
we accept the minutes as presented.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, we will accept the minutes as written. Now we'll do my president's report. Beginning in March 2019, your board began the arduous task of running your HOA in a financially conservative manner, watching each expenditure of every line item. To add to this challenge, we were thrown in multiple curveballs along the way. Unfortunately, most caused the expenditures to increase with a fixed amount of income available. Our new general manager, Jerry Evans, has spent literally days in front of his computer attempting to attain a balanced budget. And so far, so good, but has not come without painful decisions to contain, and in some cases, curtail or delay a few services. We want to make this budget on December the 31st to be fully balanced without a deficit. That's our commitment. Moving forward, your board has been in intense deliberations with our general manager to develop a realistic budget for 2020. We are not able to maintain the community to the standards that all expect on a budget that only allows us to just get by. Costs constantly go up. Our contracts have escalation clauses. Examples are payroll salaries. Landscape has a yearly 3% increase, and telecommunication fees are rising. In addition to these yearly escalations, we've been hit with a major increase in our Landscape Crawford contract of $65,000. An RFP is currently 90% complete and will be sent out for competitive bidding. Office expenses have outpaced the budget by $15,000. Maintenance and repairs have exceeded the budget by $13,000. The addition of a lake aeration maintenance contract adds another $5,000. Gate internet fees were not specifically delineated, and that's $13,000. The liability insurance policy has gone up $11.5 thousand. The telecommunications contract with CenturyLink is going to be up $51,000 next year. Additional electric to run the new lake aerators is about 10. These are just to name the majority, but a few. As you can see, expense creep has dictated a hard look at our budget numbers, and in the end necessitated an increase in our homeowners assessment rate. I'm recommending a rate increase from $587.08 to $590 a quarter. The balance of the needed increase would be paid from the telecommunications fund. This recommended increase is $2.92 a quarter. I would anticipate that going forward that a 3 to 4% homeowner assessment increases will be needed in future years. I have heard that it was ridiculous to have 3 budget workshops. Your board's pledged complete transparency, and it was done publicly. I have read posts that have chastised our work effort. It is easy to sit on the sidelines and cast stones. But let me tell you, each and every board member has done their absolute best to find ways to save money for our HOA. I have directed our general manager to have a functional video working for our next time we need it, and he's promised me that it's going to work. A constant hiccup is not acceptable by any of the board members, and I think we as residents expect a little bit better, and we're going to try to do it. I'm happy to report that our Clubhouse Improvement Committee has met and discussed possibilities for a construction manager, and will be making a recommendation in the very near future to the board to fill this position. After approval of the company to fill this position, the next step will be to select an architect to design the building that will fit our budgetary requirements. The lake aeration project is on the brink of completion. Street lights are due to be shipped mid to late November, so we should have additional lighting for the holidays. The electronic voting procedure will also be a topic for tonight's meeting. Again, lots of happenings in our great community. The board thanks you for the trust that you place in our efforts. And one thing that you can be sure, we all are trying to do our best for everyone. Bill.
Treasurer's report.
Yep.
Well, as you can see from the screen, the video is working tonight. I had to keep moving it so it didn't go to sleep and die on us, but that's there. September 30 financials, and I've got it up here for a specific reason tonight. This first part of my report is going to sound a bit like an accounting class in college, and most of you would gloss over very quickly if you didn't have something in front of you. Most of you probably gloss over even with something in front of you, but it's here so you can read it as I read it, and hopefully it'll make some more sense to you. The September 30 financial highlights. Discussions continue between Jeff Moore, Jerry Evans, Tony Gregory, our CPA, and me regarding the reporting of expenditures funded from the Telecommunications Fund. The Envira account, General Ledger number 8020, is one example. The September invoice from Corcat for the 50% deposit for the sunshades another. We've decided that operating expenses such as Envira, which are going to be paid for from telecommunications, will be reported as operating expenses on the P&L, and the entry showing contributions from the operations to the telecommunication fund, which is GL number 7811, will be reduced by the same amount. That creates a net zero on the P&L, but it will report that expenditure on the P&L where everyone can see it every month, and you'll know what we're spending the money on. There won't be any secret about it. For items of a capital nature, such as the sunshade, clubhouse expansion, or the aeration, a new account on the balance sheet for FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, will be created, and that account will be debited, while the debit to the GL number 7811 will be once again reduced for that amount. So you'll start to see assets accumulating on the balance sheet as we add assets to the community. Those assets will be depreciable assets, so we'll have to start depreciating, and there'll be an accumulated depreciation contra account set up to record the monthly depreciation, and there'll be a depreciation expense account set up on the P&L to show the expense every month of writing off a piece of every asset as it goes along. That should be more in line with generally accepted accounting principles, and that's what we'll do in the future. Since our May meeting, the General Ledger's worked to recast our budget to ensure that we end the year end at or near budgeted amounts. As of September 30, which was 75% of the year, we are at 83.6% of our budgeted revenues and 82.7% of our budgeted expenditures. That's just the running total we've had going all year on the totals, so you can see where we are. And just as a bit of an explanation, that means Jerry's collecting more money than we really budgeted him to do, and we're spending more money. But as long as that trend remains the same, we should end up the year pretty much at break even. We have 2 CDs maturing on November the 4th and 7th, and those will have to be replaced. And as I've told you in the past, interest rates are down, so interest income will probably be falling. There was a meeting of the Finance Committee in September, and the 2 main issues discussed were the 2020 budget and the reviews to be conducted by the subcommittee on the Reserves Fund and the Telecommunications Fund. The committee reached consensus on 3 items for the 2020 budget and recommends the following to the board. Cut $3,800, 50%, of the proposed budget from bank charges, coupon books, and offer online setup in addition to printed books. B, add $3,800 to other income by obtaining cash-back credit cards to pay utility bills on time. This will generate revenue as well as eliminate future late charges and deposits to utility companies. And C, increase room rentals from $200 a month to $300 a month. Jerry will address those. I think a couple he's implemented and one may not be possible, but he'll address that. As of September 30, the balances in the Reserve Fund and the Telecommunications Fund were $2.402 million and $1.902 million respectively. So that's $1.902 million in the Telecommunications Fund at September 30. In regard to telecommunications surplus funds, specifically, it began the month with $1,863,000. It earned $1,502 in interest and had $63,481 contributed from homeowner September assessments. And it paid out $26,000 for an ending balance of $1,902,605.41. The expenditures were as follows: $10,036 to Envira, $892 to Knott, Bellini and Hart, $15,062 to Corcat, and $292 to Knott, Bellini and Hart attorneys. Finally, the monthly contribution to the telecommunications fund will be reduced by $4,314 per month. That's $51,768 per year, beginning in January 2020, due to an increase for our internet service by $3 per month per house by CenturyLink. Thank you.
Okay. General Manager's report.
Oh, I have just a few items. Short. Neighborhood representatives. At the September board meeting, the board voted in favor that upon confirmation of Land-Bay Court's alternate neighborhood rep, Jeanette Bazin, I think is how you pronounce her name, Bazin, her resignation, that Melanie Palmer would be appointed to take her place in that role. And I've since confirmed that Ms. Bazin, I confirmed her resignation and informed the primary neighborhood rep, Linda Mooney, of that, and I left a message for Melanie Palmer. So want to congratulate Melanie Palmer for being appointed. In the community pool, I wanted to announce that for those of you who swim early in the morning, I think it's affected, the pool heaters were turned on day before yesterday, and it's maintained at a 85-degree temperature. I would say maintained. It obviously dips, and depending how far it dips, how long it'll take it to get back to that 85. But I did want to point out that if the air temperature goes below 50 degrees, and I assume if you've lived here long enough, you probably know what I'm going to say, that the heater shuts off as a protection against itself because it can't keep up when it gets that cold. But I think that everybody this week that swims in the morning probably has already seen a difference. Last thing I have, or I do have a couple more things to that, but ARC committee and the board liaison requested the association waive ARC application fees for a temporary period for those owners who are applying for improvements to come into compliance with the requirement to screen trash containers. Unless there are objections by the board of directors, I'd like to go ahead and accept that request and waive fees for those applicants through the end of this year. That date would correlate with the extension we provided residents a few months ago to come in compliance with the rule. So unless there's an objection, I don't need a motion, but if we do have an objection, we will take a vote. No objections?
I would like to address it,
Okay.
just from the standpoint that I'd like to, there's a page in our board packet tonight, page 44, which allows there's a fine notice, a violation notice, and it allows the resident 3 or 4 choices, and it says or, and it doesn't give any other explanations. So consequently, I know of 2 residents in my area that have abided by the requirements, and yet after abiding by the requirements, they find out that this is not what the committee wanted them to do. And of course, they didn't know it. They followed the letter, and I see another letter going out the same way that gives them an or, not an and. But so therefore, I think this needs to be addressed further. I don't know whether tonight is the time to do it, but I would like to look at it at some time in the future. And of course, I go along with waiving any of the fees that are necessary to come into a compliance. But I would like this to be an agenda item at some time in the future.
Okay, I would love to, I'll put that on the agenda next meeting, but I would like to meet with you to further understand exactly the issue. So I'm glad you brought it up, and what I'm going to talk about may not directly relate, but it might indirectly. So what happened initially is there were some homeowners who heard the presentation by the ARC committee in here, or or heard from someone secondhand that was here on what you could do to conceal your trash cans from public view. And so they went ahead and did it. What they did not understand was that you need to make an application for it. So that's the first part of the problem, and I want to emphasize that virtually every chance I get in public meetings is that no matter what you do from the outside, even if you think it's acceptable, even if it's presented here, you still need to apply for it. And that's just in case you might have misunderstood, for instance. And I look at it, it's a very, very inexpensive insurance policy, and I say that quite often because once you get an approval, the HOA cannot, without reimbursing you, ask you to remove that for non-compliance. That's a very important piece of it. The other thing that was a little bit fuzzy or controversial to some people was that the ARC committee recommended, they had a consensus on 2 ways to screen the trash can from view. One was to put it in the garage, and the other was to screen it from view with landscaping. So since that meeting, though, very quickly after that meeting, I met with the ARC committee, and we came into agreement that even though, let me back up, the reason this committee did not have a consensus on the fence or the wall was because a high percentage, and I don't know the exact amount, but I'm thinking as high as 90% of people don't have room to put a fence or a wall because of the side setback requirement. It's a 5-foot side setback, meaning you have the property line separating the houses. You have to have 5 foot clear on this side, 5 foot clear on that side. And a lot of these environments are right there on that 5-foot line to where if you put a fence, you would be over it. So the committee just felt that wasn't a viable option. What we feel is that we don't want to remove that provision, and we want to allow people to apply for a fence or wall, because quite honestly, it's in the documents and some people can do it. So I think for you as a homeowner, realize you have a 5-foot setback, and if you're one of the majority that can't fit it in, it's not going to get approved. But conversely, there's some that do have a larger lot that can do it, and I'm fine with that. The other issue was that came up recently, and it was in a draft, so I don't think you guys ever received it, but Marilyn and Doug Willett and I were talking about it, was some verbiage we used to screen the fence or the wall. Marilyn brought up a great point. She said, well, if you need to screen the wall with landscaping or the fence, why would you even do a wall or a fence? Why wouldn't you just do the landscaping? So the poor choice of words was the word screen. I've used it many, many times before, but I think because of the rule, screen the trash can from view from the street, I think that got messed up. So probably soften the fence or soften the wall with landscaping would have been a better word. I'd let Doug know that, and he made that change. I don't know if that article went out yet or not, but that's what you guys will see. So.
And Jerry, I will again remind you to look at tonight's packet, page 44. There is nothing in that letter that says they need to go back for approval. There is nothing in that letter.
Okay. So again, so when we, thank you.
And that's the same as the other residents that I'm speaking about, the same letter
Right.
that they received.
Love that. So that's a great example. So the reason we don't tell people to go and apply, obviously you don't need to apply to put your garbage can in the garage, right? So what our focus is to tell folks what the rule is. We do not get in the business of telling you guys what to do. We don't know what you're going to do, so that's why typically we don't apply for it, because we're being a little bit apprehensive or trying to acknowledge what you're doing before you tell us what you want to do. And in a lot of cases, to cure a violation, you don't have to apply. What we've done though, and I think the difference here, and I've talked to staff about this, the reason it's caught us, that issue has caught us a little bit, is simply because of the lack of consistent enforcement over the years. We're almost starting like brand new. I assume, a lot of things that a consistent program would have. So we're going to go up and beyond, and on every application, on every letter we send, it'll have some caveat that if to resolve this problem, whatever it is, if you're going to make an improvement, then you would need to fill out an ARC application to do so. So that'll help that situation in that regard.
And the residents that have already done whatever they need to do, and in one case, The lady says she has her receipt. She spent $500 on shrubbery, and then she's told it's the wrong shrubbery. You know, to me, that's unacceptable. These people need to be able to be, if no other recourse happens, they need to be grandfathered in because they did what they thought was the proper thing to do.
Did they apply for it? That would be the key, because all of these things Marilyn is saying are absolutely make sense.
They
but
didn't,
the reason
it didn't say in the letter that they had to
okay,
apply.
there we go back to that.
Okay.
So if the application says that if you do something, you have to apply for it, that is the process that prevents all of that from happening, is because the ARC committee then would review it. So I think our going forward is we put in every letter, if to cure this, you need to make an improvement, you need to apply through the ARC, that would solve the problem then, because then people would go through the ARC and they would tell them whether the plants are okay or not.
And perhaps this board needs to look at what the ARC is calling a requirement, because the requirement to put shrubbery in around your fence makes no sense to me, because if you have the fence, you're blocking the trash can. So why would you need to put shrubbery in front of your fence?
There's no requirement to put shrubbery. Again, it's softened with landscape material, and it could be a vine.
Marilyn, a fence, and it's very clear in our documents that if you put a fence in, the two types of fences that are allowed in this community are in phase 1 and 2 are chain link fences. In phase 3, it is an aluminum fence that is powder coated, and the color is called bronze. That is the definition of fences for our community. And in addition to that, every chain link or powder coated aluminum picket looking fence for phase 3 is required to be surrounded on the outside by vegetation. That being said, that's the definition. What I believe you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I believe you are discussing are the garden, a piece of garden fencing, which is not a permanent fence. It is not, it simply has two little legs that stick down in the ground. That is what some people have put in, but the actual definition of a fence for Sandoval are those two items, and our docs do require screening. I am the liaison to that committee, and they have applications all the time for fences in phase 1, 2, and 3, and those are the type of fences that are being discussed. Now, the other piece of this is that in the past 6 months, there have only been 2 applications that have been turned over to the ARC committee to screen garbage cans. And both of those applications came from members of that committee. So no one else in this entire community has sent in an application. The last piece of this is that anything, it is clearly delineated, anything that anyone does to the outside of their property, to the outside of their home, the building itself, the driveway, the walkway, any piece of landscape, it clearly says that you have to have a design review for any changes made to the exterior lawn or part of your home. And that's a requirement for everyone, and it says no exceptions. So that has been in place since 2004. It has never changed, and those were the definitions that they went by, because those are the definitions that they must follow, just as the same definition for anything that is applied for through the ARC. They have to look at the books and see if it's allowed or not, and then they investigate the setbacks and what have you. But those are the rules that they go by.
Okay, now I have some responses. First of all, the type of fence that is at the homeowner on Pamlico was placed not just with 2 stakes in the ground. It was metal stakes. Let me finish, please. I let you finish. The 2004 date, perhaps in 2019, that's 15 years, maybe it needs to be looked at again. I imagine these rules were set up by this board, so consequently changes can be made by this board. As another point, well, I had 3 points, and I think one of them has slipped my mind, but I don't think we should be in a position to penalize residents for what they feel they did correctly based on the letter they received. And so I don't know whether an appeal needs to be set up, but something needs to be done so that they don't have to worry about being fined. And that was the action they took so that they did not have to be fined. And now, oh, I know the other point. You said that the only 2 letters that were received or applications that were received were from your committee members.
Yes.
That tells me the rest of the residents didn't know about it, but your committee did.
No, it just meant that those 2 people wanted to make changes. They followed the directions of the law, and they applied for it, and they were granted the plants that they wanted to change. They did it. It was accepted, and it was not a problem.
I think at this point we can move on. And
Yes.
the last thing
Yeah,
I will say to
I-
everybody before we move on is that there is a hearing process. There's two ways that you can, tonight when we vote on these fines, feel free to vote not in favor, but even if the entire board votes in favor, they will automatically be set up for a hearing with the Covenants Committee, so they'll have an opportunity to explain to that committee exactly what you're saying. Yep,
Jerry,
thank you.
is the appeal process an equity appeal, so that if they said, yeah, we didn't follow the rule exactly, but we did what we thought per this letter that we got, can the appeal process say, all right, you're okay?
Yes.
Or do they have to say, letter of the law says
They
this, you
can
got to do that?
strike, they can either uphold what you guys decide tonight, or they can strike it.
Okay.
And if the majority of people feel like Maryland, and it's arguable, I agree, if the majority of people feel like Maryland, they would strike it.
So then Maryland, the people Maryland's talking about could go to the appeal, apply for equity, receive equity,
Yes.
and be just fine.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know that they have received violation. One person just happens to live on my street, and I don't know her name. The other one on Pamlico, I do know.
Well, if they're in violation, they would get that, and
Okay.
then if they get fined, they would get a letter saying they've been fined, and here's the hearing date.
Okay.
So, okay. Next thing, I'm sorry, the special meeting on November 7th to approve the budget was going to be at Ida Baker High School. We had it reserved, and we got bumped. And we got bumped from a school activity. They felt horrible about it, but we still got bumped. They were helping us to try to find an alternate place. So what we're looking at now is I think at the end of the meeting it'll become clear. I hope we're on a consensus tonight. I believe we are, and then we're probably going to have it right in this building right here. Yes.
Yes, and at the budget meeting the other night, I told you that I would check
Yep.
with the superintendent of our charter schools. And I was told 200. They have Oasis High School cafeteria, will seat at round tables, 200. And they have a screen, and they have a microphone, and they have it all available. There would be no charge if I was the
Wow.
one that secured it. If I'm not the one to secure it, then it's $25 an hour.
Let's visit that, if you guys don't mind, at the end of the meeting when we finish with the budget. And we'll decide whether it's going to be here and live streamed or if we go to Oasis.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the last thing I have is the proposed budget will be posted tomorrow, regardless what happens to here. We are going to go ahead and post it tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and we'll have hard copies available as well.
May I have your notes?
And I am completed.
Okay. Do we have a report from the clubhouse improvement?
Am I doing that?
You're up. Yeah, why don't you two of you do it?
I'll start off.
Okay.
Our committee met tonight. We met Monday. We met the previous week, and also on the weekend. We interviewed multiple architects and construction managers. This was done to fulfill our commitment to present the best clubhouse we can based on the strictures previously put on us. In short, there has been a tremendous work effort and commitment by the committee members, and I want to thank them each. Also, there was tremendous work previously done by Molly and Maryland to help us get to this point. We continue to work very diligently, and we are very optimistic in the very near future we will be able to announce our construction manager. We are working on it literally right up until 2 minutes before this meeting, so it's of the utmost importance to us. Do you want to add anything?
Okay, the reason we can't make a recommendation right now is because we sent specific questions to, we talked to 3 construction managers. One was not bondable, so we honed in on 2. We sent specific questions to those 2 because we decided that of the 2, either one will do us a good job. We won't make a bad decision whichever way we go, and we're looking for some way to differentiate between the 2. So we asked some specific questions. One of them did answer the questions, one did not because he did not receive the email with the questions in it. So that's to be sent to him tonight, and I'm assuming we'll meet tomorrow and try to make a determination so that we can make a recommendation to the board, and then at the November 7th meeting, we'll make a recommendation to the board, then let the board vote on who we hire as a construction manager, and after that, we'll start working on architects to get the project back on track.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Bill. Taylor Morrison litigation.
This will be short. Our committee met again this week, actually, just on this past Wednesday, yesterday morning. We are evaluating a number of consultants. We are keeping a very close eye on Phase 3 transition items. We expect to do a full review of Phase 3 transition in the near future, and we remain very optimistic.
Can I add one thing to that? Tamara's comment on the drainage issue back there is part of the Taylor Morrison litigation, and I was more optimistic that they were going to do that than any other project. We were that close, and then I think we just had to put them on notice in a certain way, and the timing of that got, and since then.
We haven't put anyone on any notice.
Okay, I thought that they
No,
were.
I can clarify
absolutely
that.
I
not.
apologize.
I can
Absolutely
clarify that. We've actually been working quite well on Phase 3 transition items with Taylor Morrison. We prefer to work together on those issues to get them done expeditiously. I believe that we have an agreement to get most of the items done. It's lagging a bit recently, and it may come to a point where we will need to set some very strict deadlines and then do it ourselves. But we're certainly giving them a cure period and giving them a chance to get it done. But I can tell you the drainage is on that list that we've sent them.
Thanks, Ron.
Sunshade.
Capital improvements. Skipped one.
Oh, capital improvements. I checked it off already.
The Capital Improvement Committee met at the Verdmont Wall with representatives from Permacast to consider relocating the new wall in order to minimize landscaping damage. This new wall is going to take somewhere around $200,000 of your money. Permacast has also been presented with a letter of intent from Sandoval. In addition, a check was processed for Permacast in the amounts of $2,200 for engineering drawings and $1,500 for permitting, totaling $3,700. We are currently researching property lines as well as city regulations that may affect the project. As an update to this, I did speak with the city today. It just so happens that we do own Hayden Lane, 100% of it. We actually own, there's a sidewalk south of Hayden Lane. We own that sidewalk and some soil on the other side. So I know Don did stake off a 15-foot right-of-way, I believe it was. That is not a public right-of-way. That is a private right-of-way. So that's our right-of-way.
Okay.
So that's good news for us in that we own the road. He didn't think we'd have any problem moving the wall. The bad news is someday we're going to have to repave that road.
Yeah, we knew that.
Good news is if you drive fast, there are no speed limit signs on that road. And it cannot be policed.
So he said that we could then go on our own right away if we wanted to.
He's going to double check with his supervisor, but
Okay.
he thought it looked pretty good.
That's
As
great.
soon as we know that, then we can contact Permacast. Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Thank you.
The parking lot projects are waiting for engineering drawings from Avalon Engineering. Once those are received, we can request we can send out for requests for proposals to several different vendors to see what actual quotes will be. On the lounge chairs, 20 broken pool lounge chairs have been repaired at the welding shop at an average cost of $26 each. Another 11 chairs are currently at the welding shop. This board originally authorized $1,000 to repair 20 chairs. When we get done, we will have repaired 31 chairs at a total cost of just over $800. That's less than the cost of 2 new chairs. I'd like to thank Keith Scott for volunteering his time and his pickup truck to help with this project. That's all I have.
One thing if I could add on that, I heard when the $200,000 was said the cost of the wall, and just to let everyone know, that's a reserve item, so that's coming out of the reserve account. So it's not coming out of any of our operating or CenturyLink or any of that. That is out of reserve money that we budgeted for.
I had a question on the drawings that you sent for the sunshade earlier today. You asked me if that was acceptable, and I thought it needed to be professionally drawn, and I know okay.
I just got an email.
Oh, okay.
It just popped up.
Okay.
So I'll include that in my report. Which is next. So sunshade, basically we have concluded our task, except for the last 2 things that we did. As liaison and board member for the committee, I signed off on the engineering drawings to give them the go-ahead to take them to engineering. And then we did sign off previously on the color choices, so we are good with that. And then recently, as Jerry was just alluding to, we received some phone calls from a Corcat representative in Georgia asking for site plan drawings for the sunshade. And Jerry and I had spoken on the phone, and a little bit of Jersey came out of my mouth. Sorry about that, Jerry. But I figured, why should we, as the HOA, encumber a cost to come up with a site plan when that, in my opinion, should have been covered by the vendor? So what I did was I had an overlay of Google Earth on this, so I overlaid that. It was a professional drawing, but I kind of put my stuff in there, sent it to Jerry for a review, and then I just received something from Corcat today from Josh Verdome saying that that's something standard that they ask for. I guess the office wasn't sure who to ask, but it appears that Corcat will now be providing that site plan, so we don't have to encumber a cost, or they don't have to look at my sketchy sketches. So,
Good deal.
ARC appointment for old business.
We've handled that in my manager.
I thought that, okay.
Do we need to vote on it?
We have to vote.
It was already.
It was done last time.
yeah.
It was
wasn't
voted on at the end of the last meeting. Yeah, we did. We reconvened the meeting and we
Shows you I
voted.
do
It's
read
in
my
our
pack.
minutes. Oh, the ARC, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that wasn't ARC.
we're combining two things.
That was neighborhood liaison.
You're right. The following 2 residents applied for the ARC committee, taking the place of a recent resignation, Chris Bechtel and Francis McKinnon. Last month, I reported that the ARC committee was currently interviewing these applicants. Upon completion of the interviews, committee chairperson Carol Torello wanted me to publicly thank each candidate for their interest and said that both candidates were well qualified. However, she recommends Chris Bechtel to be appointed to the committee to take the place of outgoing member Grady Stevens. As a result, I recommend the board make a motion appointing Chris Bechtel to the ARC committee.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. New business, amenity rule violation, fine and suspension.
On September 28th, one of our pool attendants, Patty Conklin, was verbally abused by a resident of Sandoval at the community pool. A report of the incident follows on the next page of your board pack. As referenced, the board approved conduct policy followed in your board pack after the incident report. I'm recommending the board make a motion leveling a fine against the homeowner account in the amount of $100 and suspending the homeowner account of vehicle access and amenity access privileges for a period of 2 weeks. Of note, the recommended, and this is, I wanted to point this out. Of note, the recommended motion above, as it relates to suspensions, relates to all residents of the home who have gate access tags and amenity access cards. And after the motion and second, if you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to elaborate.
Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? All in favor of the recommendation by the general manager, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Okay. Next.
On Sunday, October 13th, 2019, one of our pool attendants, Mary Pava, was verbally abused by a 14-year-old resident of Sandoval. Mary's statement follows on the next page in your board pack. The resident refused to conform to directions provided by Mary and refused to leave the pool area. As a result, I was called in and came in to speak with the resident. After speaking with the resident about the incident, I spoke to the mother on the phone. The resident's mother agreed that the daughter's language, if cited correct, was inappropriate and that she would handle the situation. However, the resident's mother disagreed with the HOA enforcing a bathing suit issue with her daughter, who she said was wearing a certain type of bikini. I informed the mother that the bathing suit was being worn inappropriately. I'm having to edit some of this, guys, sorry. And that we would have to enforce it as a
I would
violation.
just refer to the board pack.
I'll refer to the board pack.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the fine of $100 and a suspension of 2 weeks. And again, that extends to the family.
Any discussion? All in favor of the fine and suspension, signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Delinquent accounts to the attorney for collections. There are no new accounts with a balance of greater than $600 for a period of greater than 60 days who have not already been approved by the board to go to the attorney. And I did include the delinquent report so you can see where we're at on that. On delinquent account suspensions, there are 7 new accounts with a balance greater than $50 for a period of greater than 90 days have not already been approved by the board for suspensions. The delinquency report is on the next page with details in the 3 categories. The pink highlights already approved to go to the attorney. The blue indicates they're on a payment plan, and the yellow is what you're looking at. That indicates who have a balance of greater than $50 for a period of greater than 90 days. Make a recommendation the board make a motion to suspend leasing activity, vehicle access tags, amenity access cards. And Ron, do you want me to go ahead and include voting on this as well? I think it would be appropriate. And voting rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we were in conversations with the attorney today on electronic voting. Ron will be reporting on that. And he mentioned that we specifically have to suspend them from voting, but the criteria is 90 days delinquent, any amount. So I suggest we use the same $50 threshold for that as well. So including from this point forward in every board meeting, it would be leasing activity, vehicle access tags, amenity access cards, and voting privileges. So
Okay. I do have one question, though, for Jerry and maybe Ron, too, being our legal guy,
Go
so to
easy with
speak. When we go through the list, some of the names that are on that list are what I would call active vendors within the city and probably hold a license. As you know, licenses are required to do work in Sandoval. Would it be possible to also suspend their privilege to do work within the community because they are a
You're
licensed
talking
vendor?
about gate strikes right now, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about delinquent.
Oh.
Because if we're taking those other things away from them, and they're practicing their business within here, knowing that, they are delinquent in their dues.
I see. I think I would have to defer to a legal opinion, but I think we're hard pressed to suspend anyone, like one of these homeowners, for having them to have a guest come over. I just don't think that we could do, meaning,
I
No,
think
no,
he,
no, no.
I think he's referring
He's
to
talking
actually
about a vendor
doing
who would
work
be
within
doing
the
work
community.
that lives here as well?
Correct.
He's
Right,
talking
that's
about their
what I'm saying.
livelihood,
I think
not
that'd be
their
very-
guests.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, they could consider it if Frank in the audience wants to invite Joe, who's delinquent, to come over and fix his AC. You're saying to prevent that from happening?
Yes.
I think that would be hard
I think that would be
I don't see
I
how we
think
could
it'd be
enforce it.
impossible to know. You might know by looking at a list that this person's a vendor, but how would, some people, we might not realize they're a vendor. I think, you would have
Right. It
presidential.
just, to me, it kind of flies in the face, again, of somebody who we know is doing business, and the rest of the community has to foot that delinquency, so to speak.
Yeah, I can get a legal opinion, but again, I wouldn't be
Would Scott,
optimistic.
would it be conceivable, would you concur that perhaps we should not put them on a recommendation list?
At the very least.
We could, yeah.
Yeah, if you have a recommended list, or you have people with a business that on the business list, then you would coordinate that.
I need to
That
get
would
an
be
opinion on
appropriate.
that.
But
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you it's going to be no.
I think that you'll have people that you miss.
Yeah, it's not.
It'd be
I honestly
selective
wouldn't
enforcement.
even waste money.
It was just that, again, I just, bikini and this, and so it's kind of, again, I'm a consistency guy. I kind of wanted an equal playing field. If we're going to suspend somebody's privilege for X, that's just,
But Scott, even though we're suspending their gate access pass, they can still come in. So we're not locking them out of the community. So
They just
for
have to
us
come
to
into the business.
suspend their right to make a livelihood, that might be a little
Right.
iffy.
All you could do is trespass, and that's going to be a pretty difficult standard.
Yeah.
So can we get back to the motion? It was moved.
Yep, so let me restate what I recommend the motion to be. I recommend the board make a motion to suspend leasing activity, vehicle access tags, amenity access cards, and voting privileges on the 7 accounts presented in yellow in your delinquent report.
I so move.
Second? Okay, any discussion?
I'm sorry, who was
Yes.
second? Thank you, Al.
I've got discussion. Looking at that list, we voted several months ago to remove anybody from that list that's under $5, and we still have a penny, a nickel, a dime, people
And
in
I've
there.
asked that, and I was told that they were removed, and then when the new quarterly assessments came, they came back again, and many of them were the same people.
But they're showing 90 days in arrears. So it's not a new penny,
That's a good
it's a
point.
90-day-old penny, so somehow they may have removed it from the general ledger, but they didn't remove it from that report.
I'll find an answer to you. I did inquire,
They
and
used
that's what I was
whiteout,
told.
they didn't change it in the computer.
No, she's over 90. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Your
Next,
vote?
We need to vote.
We thought we voted.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
account fines regarding deed restrictions. Following their 9 violations, we're requesting the board issue a $100 fine for. All residents who are fined will receive a hearing letter for November 20th, 2019, where the committee will either uphold the fine or strike the fine based on evidence presented by the HOA and the resident. I recommend the board make a motion to fine each of the 6 residents a $100 fine as presented.
Okay, so
Any
Scott?
discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Uh,
Next business is gate rule violations. On the following page are 4 gate rule violations which led to gate strikes, 3 of which we have complete information on and are requesting the board issue a $100 fine for each one. The 4th violation will be included in next month's board pack. All individuals fined will receive a hearing letter for November 21st, 2019, where the committee will either be upholding the fine or striking the fine based on the evidence by the HOA and the individual. Recommend the board make a motion to fine each of these 3 individuals $100 as presented.
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Next business, electronic voting on Thursday, October 10th, 2019, and Monday, October 21st. Ron Spooner, Lee Broel, Doug Willett, and I met to go over logistics of electronic voting. I believe this is a great core group of volunteers, and we're making excellent progress. I'll have Ron give an update to those meetings.
As Jerry said, in the past few weeks, Lee Broel, Doug Willett, Jerry, and I have met multiple times, 3 times actually. We had a long meeting today, so I apologize if this summary is a little disjointed, but I'm going to read from my notes. We've reviewed 5 different companies that offer electronic voting. We are recommending Becker ballots, which is administered through our legal counsel, Becker Poliakoff, and this is based on cost and security. The cost is $350 per vote, or $700 for unlimited voting and also unlimited surveys per year. Those surveys would obviously be secure, similar to the voting method. We met with counsel to discuss security, ensure proper controls are in place. We met with Becker Ballot's IT department to go over the software. We are on schedule for March 2020 election. So what comes next? We will be sending out a letter to every resident that gives you the ability to sign up for electronic voting. And if you choose, you can also receive all your HOA correspondence electronically. We'd encourage residents to do this because this will save us a tremendous amount of money. We will also have forms available on our website. We'll have forms available with Linda at the clubhouse. We're also going to have workshops and forms available there also. Our focus here is on security and educating the residents through the process. We are going to provide a 1-800 number directly to IT for any questions. We hope to do a practice vote. We will also have a computer in the lobby, we expect, that will allow people to vote here in the clubhouse. Again, what we want to reiterate is that we will ensure there are absolute controls in place to ensure things like the voting log is kept secure. And again, security is our primary focus here. Let's see what else. I will mention too that in the past 6 weeks, Becker Ballots had 21 different HOAs sign up just recently in the past 6 weeks. And we expect to be sending out the letters in the next 2 weeks. And we'll make sure that we, like we said, have a number of workshops and be open to all questions. This system will be different from our regular email system. We provide the information to our legal counsel, who will make sure that it is kept secure and that the electronic voting is run through him. And of course, this will be the same counsel that will be present at our meetings, when we vote. So we encourage questions, but we are going to expect to do a lot in the next few weeks. So we'll keep you updated.
Thank you, Ron. And for the board, I have 3 associated motions related to electronic voting. The first is I recommend the board to make a motion establishing an electronic voting ad hoc committee with Ron Spooner as the chairperson, Lee Broel, and Doug Willett as members. And before you vote on that, I anticipate this core committee establishing subcommittees as well. Specifically, at some point, we'll be reaching out to neighborhood reps to form an election subcommittee, as we've had in the past years. Also anticipate needing help with the communications in the form of an annual meeting subcommittee, and the communications committee will probably be represented there, and possibly others as well. Bottom line, we're going to need a lot more volunteers to serve on subcommittees performing various specialized tasks as we go through this process. So again, I'd like the board to make a motion establishing an electronic voting ad hoc committee with Ron Spooner as chairperson, Lee Broel, and Doug Willett as members.
A discussion for me.
Yeah, I would like to add something too, so
All ad hoc committees have 2 board members, and I feel that it would be only appropriate for this as well.
please. I have no objections to
And
that.
so it is there any board member that would like to volunteer for that?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to add to that, there are 3 different access points to electronic voting. One is an admin, another one is a reviewer, and then a user. The reviewer can look at the information, and the admin can manipulate the information. I'm here to help set up electronic voting to make sure it's secure, but I've specifically asked not to be added as an admin or a reviewer. In fact, I don't think any resident should do that. I think that we should hand that to management and make sure it is kept secure. So me being part of the electronic voting committee, it does not give me any more access than any other member or in fact any other resident.
Agreed.
Vote.
Okay, so we have moved and seconded that we're going to add Ron Spooner, Marilyn Stout, Doug Willett, and Lee Burrell to the electronic voting ad hoc committee. All in favor of that motion?
I'm going to
Anyone
abstain.
opposed? Did you raise your hand?
I abstained. No, it doesn't.
The next business, recommend the board make a motion authorizing elections. While we already authorized the community to use electronic voting as a method to vote, we're told we need to make specific motions at a board meeting for a specific meeting. So I recommend the board make a motion authorizing elections at the 2020 annual meeting to be conducted using electronic voting, which will also include the ability for owners to continue using paper ballots in lieu of electronic voting if they choose.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Are we setting a date for the meeting?
March 12th? The board make a motion authorizing elections at the 2020 annual meeting to be conducted using electronic voting,
You can give that paper
which will
tomorrow.
also include the ability for
That's what
owners to
you should do
continue.
that tomorrow.
I need to read off here, though.
What she needs for the minutes when you're done.
Do we have a?
I moved.
He moved, I
Bill
seconded.
second. You're welcome.
Okay, no more discussion? All in favor of approving the motion as read? Opposed? Okay, so moved.
So the cost for the software to vote is $350 per voting event, or I'd like to call it a meeting because you can have multiple votes in a particular night and still only pay the $350. Or you can pay $700 for unlimited voting if you have multiple votes, different meetings throughout the year. So I think we, yes, it's an annual fee.
Voting and surveys.
Yep, so that's what I'm going to. So then the thing we're looking at is they also offer surveys. Doug and his committee need a little bit of time to research the survey end of it to make sure it's something that they want. If it's something they want, it would really benefit us to go ahead and pay the $700 for the unlimited. But if it's not something they would use, then we would recommend the $350. So with that said, I recommend the board make a motion authorizing the association to use Becker Ballots as the firm to contract with for electronic voting at the 2020 annual meeting at a cost of $350. And after further committee research, if the committee believes Becker ballot surveys are a good fit for the communication committee needs, authorize the association to expense an additional $350 for Becker ballot, which will allow unlimited voting and unlimited surveys for a period of 1 year.
Will we have the option to upgrade to the 700 after we pay the 350, or?
I don't think we asked that question. I mean,
I
I think we,
think there's some problems with that. And my interpretation of that, a survey would be invalid or with data if you don't have the entire community participating in electronic voting and participating in the survey. So you would not be collecting data on people that were voting by paper ballot.
so you're suggesting, and
I would
probably right,
suggest
so
the
that
350.
there may be
I mean,
people.
once if we had 100% participation and that was on their.
Oh, you'll never have 100%.
No, so I don't see how the survey from them would help us in it.
Should we find out if we can load all the appropriate emails
Yeah.
so that they could survey even if they don't opt into voting? Is that
We're-
not an
Yeah,
option?
well, unless it's a separate system, but we were told today, but quite honestly, we were talking about voting at the time, so maybe that's a question Doug can ask in his research.
I think you have to sign up, so I think you would require permission of people to have their email put into that data bank.
He's requiring, for voting, they're requiring one official email per household. Whereas, we talked about it, one of the benefits of not using this would be Doug having multiple email addresses for each household, and you reach more people. And so that's going to be part of his research in determining whether he would want to spend the extra $350 or
What
not.
about a homeowner that owns more than one home here and uses the same email address?
We asked that
Yeah,
question,
it's-
and the vote would be weighted. So for instance, if you own 3 houses, it would be like 3 votes. It's per household, 1 resident per household, but for each house they own.
Then I can second your motion that we go with the 350? But
And then
with-
after research from him, which I think he would take Don's comments in consideration. Yep.
Yeah, I would defer to Communications Committee and
Yeah.
want that question answered also.
So
Well,
moved.
we're just doing
Sure.
discovery.
Okay. So are
Okay.
we going to put the
350.
portion, this, only 350 and not up to 700?
No.
Okay.
I think we start off with this. You can move to the next step. I'd recommend moving to the next step after you get one thing working well.
Well,
So-
even if they say we can't upgrade, we could do the 350 this year and
And
do
next year.
700 next year.
Absolutely.
If there's a way to include
Right.
everybody for surveying.
I kind of think they're going to work with us and let us upgrade if we know within
Well,
a.
I think we take a step at a time. Let's get the electronic voting working.
Okay, so there's no one has moved yet, but you are asking for a cost of $350 per meeting/vote for the annual 2020 at this point in any addition.
So moved.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, second? Second. Discussion. All in favor of the 350 electronic voting, Becker and Polikoff? Okay, anyone opposed? Thank you.
So the next agenda item is solicitation for additional agenda items. And before we go to what I think everybody was anticipating is talking about the budget funding, I have one other agenda item that popped up today that I wanted to share with everybody. I'll pass this out. I've already given a copy to Al, and he might comment on this. This is a proposal for the lake fountain.
Is this one for everyone?
Pass one down. There you go. You should have one. So basically the fountain at Bellevue, the Bellevue Lake, I think everybody's known, we've had some inconsistencies over the past 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks, actually.
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years, he said. So the last 3 attempts to repair, we have known that there is a pending pump issue, but our electrician has thought that he could have Band-Aided a little more time. And but as it turned out, their last repair about 2 weeks ago worked only for a few days. And then we've since had a couple of companies come out, and the determination at this point, they just can't do any more for us. So we need a new pump and motor, 5 horsepower, for the Bellevue Lake. Solitude gave me a bid for $4,038.40, and then $42.21 with tax. And that includes the motor, the pump, the control box, parts, and shipping. Our reserve study calls for $6,000 every 2 years plus inflation. However, the first event isn't scheduled until 2021. I do not believe expensing that amount from the reserves in 2019, then adjusting with the next reserve study would have that big of an impact. Meaning I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities that we are definitely going to save $4,000 on multiple projects over the next 2 years. So if we chose to spend the money now, and I think we could easily make it up before the next reserve study. And if approved now, so we can go ahead and get that fountain going, I will still present a bar for the expense at the next board meeting as a type of affirmation on the expense. So I'm really looking for guidance, not only using Solitude, do you want me to go out for bids on that at $4,000, or do you want me to go ahead and proceed?
I think at the last meeting, Scott had a recommendation to investigate having an above-ground pump with LED lights, so.
Yeah, this has been on my radar for years now, being with the lakes and everything, and this just eats residents' money up and I'm not saying abandon it, because I'm all for the aesthetics of it, and just so everybody knows, it is aesthetics, it doesn't do anything for water quality, but, you know, a 5 horsepower pump, as we know, it
Costs us between $6,000 and $7,000 a year.
in electricity.
Well, that and the cost of the pump.
Right.
The pump is they only last 2 years.
And because they're
that.
submersible, and it's, so to me, I would rather, you know, give some direction if we could to look at the other options if you want, and I'd be more than happy to jump in on that. Because I do have some paperwork from before about more economical fountains with LED lights that we can change the color and do all those sort of things.
Yeah, so why don't we meet, if not tomorrow, either Monday or Tuesday, early next week, so we can get a handle on it.
Okay.
And we'll
We'll
group together.
look at
and-
schedules.
Yep, very good. Thank
So are we going to table that?
you. Yes, thank you.
Pass your papers back.
And with that, the only other additional item I am aware of is I'd like someone on the board to make a motion to add 2020 budget funding as an additional agenda item for discussion.
I so move.
Okay. I've made, in my president's
Oh, we
report,
don't have a second yet.
Second.
all in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion, well, in my president's report, I made a recommendation for the funding of the 2020 budget, and I'm open for questions and open for discussion. And my recommendation was that we increase the HOA assessment from 58108 to 590, and the balance be funded out of the telecommunications fund, and then the final budget numbers, we know we're going to make as tight as we can to have quality coverage of all of our line items, so that we're not in the position that we were, as I explained this year, with many items well over what we had budgeted.
Is this an agenda item for the next meeting, or is this discussion tonight?
This is
Discussion.
Well, we'd like to
Discussion
have
tonight.
discussion tonight, so that when we have the board meeting to
Meeting.
do the final vote, we have the number on there, so
Okay.
that at that meeting, it's not going to be another discussion on how we're going to fund it. We're making that decision.
Decision tonight,
Now,
okay.
so that the other meeting, we won't have an issue that we have to determine.
Plus for Jerry to publish it.
Oh,
He can
right,
publish
right.
it, and there'll, people have an expectation of what would be.
Just so I'm clear, the recommendation is $2.90 increase a month,
92.
92?
A quarter.
A quarter.
Quarter.
$2 and,
So it's about 90 cents per month.
I had 292, but anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Which takes it up
So
to,
It's $2.92 per quarter, so
So
a
it's
third of that per month.
Less than $1 a month.
okay. And that equates to,
$12?
$12. And that is that basically covering about 1 to 1.5% of the budget increase for next year?
I think that is correct, yes.
You want to calculate that?
I'd have to get my computer out to do that for sure.
We can get one for you.
And I think this whole board acknowledges there have been a number of escalation clauses that have hit us this year. A number of items, frankly, that have been contractually agreed to have impacted our 2020 budget. The other thing I just personally say that, this board could have met in non-quorum groups and hammered out a plan behind the scenes. We agreed to do one board workshop. We didn't reach an agreement after that one board workshop, so we did two. We still didn't reach an agreement, so we did three, and now we're here discussing it. And the goal here is to let you all know what we're thinking. These things are sometimes messy, but I can say that I personally appreciate the dedication to each of these board members, and they've been respectful, they've been open, and I thought the process, although it's not always pretty, I personally felt very comfortable with it. I think that this is what Don recommended is reasonable. It's not a tremendous allocation from an assessment standpoint. So I'm okay with proceeding with that.
I would like to add the fact that in all years past for Sandoval, either the declarant set the budget and did all of that with no one knowing, or the treasurer and the board did it in a behind closed door session before the general manager and the president did it before it was brought to the board, and then from the board it was brought to the public. All that being said, you can expect to have, on average, with properties this size, 30 to 40 revisions any given year when you're working on a budget. That's typical. This is a big project, and there are things that change every year. So investigations and line items, amounts have to be altered all the time, and then you try and work to find the savings. So just having these few open sessions attests to the fact that there's been a whole lot of work done by each board member to get to this point. And we have brought it from here and kept bringing it down. So when you look at this, when it's presented to you, realize that a whole lot of work has gone into this, not just a small amount that you see on the few hours that we have been sitting in front of you. Thank you.
While I would agree with Ron's position and also yours, for me, I just keep going back to, and this is not to dispute we do or we don't need a larger building. It's that people voted, and we're going to honor that vote to not expand. I want to use your terminology. Improve. Improve. And that caveat there was by no assessments. And I think people were voting either way on those bullet points. And I still think it's an obligation to me to honor the way it was presented to the residents. And yes, $2.92 is a menial amount of money, and I understand that. And other than that, Don, I would say I agree with you. And I do say that I do agree, but the people had voted on something with these stipulations, almost a quid pro quo. So what I would say is fund everything through CenturyLink, but the $100,000 that we were going to spend on the two parking lots, since there seems to be a vast majority of people who also don't want us to keep raiding that fund, I would say don't do the parking lots now. Put that $100,000 into the fund for the new building, and then after that, we'll have $100,000, so we'll actually reach that goal 2 months quicker. So fund everything from the telecommunications, but do not do that improvement and put $100,000 back into the building expansion.
I'll share my thoughts. When I think of less than $1 a month, it seems reasonable to move forward in that kind of a direction. But I am a city council member that has sat on council with being against taking money out of the general fund to subsidize the charter schools, because that's what the residents were told when those schools were built. And some of the council members say, well, that wasn't my vote. But I think that's why people don't trust government anymore, is because we don't live with what was a decision in the past. And so I'm hard pressed because as I've been told and as I remember, residents were told clubhouse 3 times the size of the present one. They were told that it would be 1.9 million. And they were told that assessments would not increase. Are we going to go against what the residents were told and voted on? If this actually went to a vote, then somehow there has to be a way to either re-vote or I would like to see what was actually voted on. If that was actually voted on, it would seem to me that we have to live with it as much as we can. We can't with a clubhouse that's 3 times the size, but we can live with the other 2 portions of that resolution if that is, I haven't seen it, I don't remember the verbiage. But
Yeah,
if in
we can have
fact
Carol
that
pull it
was
right
what
up.
was voted on, then I don't see how we can go against it.
I don't think it said anything about HOA fees, but if we can take a 5...
Molly, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I don't think it said anything about an HOA fee. I cannot guarantee that. If we can take a 5-minute break, we can pull it up on the computer and we can give you the exact verbiage.
Okay, and the reason, and I think Bill just has, receiving the email from Jerry today about the fact that borrowing from the reserve fund would have to go to the community for a vote, that tells me the votes count. You know, if our residents vote to do something, then I think it's incumbent upon us to do our best to abide by that vote. So if you don't mind, I'm going to, and you've marked.
Would you like to read it aloud to us?
Pardon?
Would you like to read it aloud to us?
Yes, I will, since you marked the relevant parts. Is that correct?
No,
Well,
we
they're
needs
all
to-
relevant. The whole thing's relevant.
Okay, to read the whole thing. Whereas Article 3.4 of the amended and restated bylaws provides that decisions that require a vote of the members must be made by concurrence of a majority of the voting interests present in person or by proxy, represented at a meeting at which a quorum has been obtained. Whereas the Board of Directors is desirous of making improvements to the association common areas by construction of the clubhouse complex in conformity with the preliminary plans prepared by Tisch and KO Architects, LLC, the project, subject to the following conditions. A, the successful bid price of the clubhouse expansion project shall not exceed $1.9 million. B, the purchase of furniture, equipment, and interior furnishings not supplied under the construction contract shall not exceed $100,000. C, the entire cost of the clubhouse expansion project must be paid out of the telecommunications surplus. D, the groundbreaking for the clubhouse expansion project cannot occur until at least $1.3 million has been accumulated in the telecommunications surplus. E, the clubhouse expansion project may not be funded through any borrowing by the association or any special assessments. F, the clubhouse expansion shall not trigger an increase in staff. Whereas the Board of Directors desires to obtain a membership vote with regard to the project in compliance with Article 3.4 of the amended and restated bylaws. Now therefore, in consideration of the foregoing premises, the members have adopted the following resolution. The above, number 1, the above recitations are true and correct and incorporated into the resolution. 2, by adoption of the resolution, the association members authorizes the Board of Directors to implement the project consistent with the preliminary plans prepared by Tisch plus KO Architects LLC, including but not limited to the authority to execute contracts for the work and take all other actions are appropriate to implement the project. This resolution was adopted at a meeting of the association held Monday, January 29th, 2018. There were X votes in favor and X opposed. I don't have those numbers. But in reading this, it does not say assessments cannot be increased.
That is correct.
That's correct.
So
Says we can't do a
therefore, I
special
think we
assessment.
are free to do as has been suggested.
Correct. And I think the confusion has come from reading the resolution and reviewing the actual meeting. In the meetings, they said no dues increase. In the resolution, they didn't mention dues increase. So of course, there's going to be some confusion there, and that's been part of my compromise on this issue. And that's the reasoning why I've reevaluated my stance. I think it's at a reasonable amount, not excessive at all. What did we say, 90 cents a month?
The increase of quarterly assessments to $590 per quarter per household will be a 0.49% increase. Half a
0.49%.
less than 0.5%.
What will the total budget increase?
The total budget increase is from 3.346 in 2019 to 3.534.
No, percentage.
It's 5.635%.
So approximately 5% will be coming from the fund?
You're probably pretty close, but you can't
But-
just add
but-
percentages and
but-
do that, but yeah.
A percent? Because the 1.5 is already, okay. All right.
So, Don, can you tell us how much longer it will take us then to be able to have enough money for the clubhouse if we adopt a $2.92?
determination because we've been in discussions on funding, and I don't think we're at a point we need to really talk about that. We need to get a construction manager, we need to get the architect, and then the very next step prior to getting the architect is come to a consensus as to how we would use, where the funds would come from.
But it certainly would not compromise the project. I don't see it materially pushing, extending the project.
Until we have a construction manager, an architect, the architect draws the plans, the construction manager does a takeoff on them, we don't know what the cost is. So we can't tell you how long it would take to get to that cost until we know what that cost is.
I guess maybe I worded my question inappropriately. To reach 1.9 plus soft costs, approximately, how many months do you anticipate that being compared to what we were talking a few days ago, and what with an increase of $17 from a possible increase of $17 per resident per quarter down to a $2.92 increase per resident per quarter?
I thought,
We discussed the other night a possibility
correct.
of bringing it up to $605. So that was approximately a $17 increase per quarter. That was one of the many discussions that we had.
The
And now-
$605,000 was if 100% of the increase was funded by the homeowners. It was a $33 increase. for the 605,000.
And by the homeowners. I just wanted to
That-
make it clear that that's one of the discussions that we had, and it's gone from a contribution of $17 down to a contribution of $2.92. I just wanted to make that comparison as we've gone from one to another.
I think the important thing to consider here is that if we're having a slight budget increase in the HOA assessment has absolutely nothing to do with the clubhouse expansion. It's all these numbers that I've shown you that we have had a tremendous increase in our budget. And I think that as a compromise, that number has been lowered as to what the assessment would be, but I think there's a nominal amount of money that I think should come from assessments to help with this, to make our community better.
Well, I can tell you that from the $33 per quarter household increase, it took 10.7 months to reach 2.3 million. At $17.92, it took 12.92 months, so that's about 2 months additional. So you're probably looking at 2 more months, 14 months maybe.
That's the question.
That's
I
a
need to
guess,
have
though.
answered.
That's swag.
But I wanted the audience or the members of the community to understand that that's what we're talking about time-wise.
Okay.
Thank you.
How many total?
Yes, what is the amount, if you don't mind me interrupting, that we're going to be assessed additionally in regards to dues versus what's going to be extracted from the telecommunications budget? If you could just clarify that for me, perhaps I'm not understanding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Give or take, yep.
$188,575 we're going to increase the budget, plus the CenturyLink. Plus the CenturyLink, which is $51,444. So total load two is about $240,000 that the budget will increase. And so if we take the 0.5% from an HOA increase, then the other 7 is coming out of the CenturyLink.
That's not what we discussed last time, though. Was 3 and 3.
So 186 is coming out of CenturyLink.
Well, it's not that anything's coming out, it would be less going in, but the 1.5% he's talking about is because CenturyLink is raising their fees.
We understand that.
So that's going to have to be paid to pay that, less money will go into CenturyLink because we're paying it to CenturyLink instead of putting it in savings. Yeah.
CenturyLink of $3, I think I heard.
$3 per home per month, yes.
So that'd be reducing our contribution to that, but specifically with this, 186,000 is being added to assist with this budget increase, is that correct?
The 186 included the CenturyLink, 188 included the CenturyLink increase, didn't it?
Include the CenturyLink increase and put it up, yes, and it decreased the amount being contributed.
But see, there was what part of my proposal was, and I believe Marilyn had said in the last meeting that the city wasn't requiring additional parking spaces for other HOAs that were expanding. So we were proposing to spend $100,000 on parking lots. So if we did not and I don't want to say take away, if we did not, I know, but just listen, if that's $100,000 so that would take it from 188 to only 88,000, and then when the building is built, each month we accrue 50-some thousand. So 2 months after the building is built, we'd have enough to do those parking lots, and we wouldn't have to siphon off any of that money. So we would diminish the impact from the CenturyLink by $100,000. That was my initial jest, because a lot of the people had the concern that we were diverting some of that money. So we would offset those parking lot till whenever the building is completed, and we put that $100,000 back into that account from the monthly. So that was.
But the 10 months, the 12 months, and the probably 14 months included paying the $100,000 now.
The other thing that you have to take in consideration is that if we're going to have a building built over here, you're going to lose a lot of parking places where all the construction equipment is going to be. If you've already had done some forethought and you've built a parking lot over here, we've replaced those parking spots that you're going to lose during construction, so we can still function in this building and still have a place to park around.
And I agree, but I was just,
So-
when I looked at the 128, let's just say, emails, texts, and phone calls that I got from the people, the majority of the people said, fund it all from the telecommunications fund, and then the rest of it were, do not raid the telecommunications fund. So they were the two majority. So I was looking at a compromise for the folks out there to kind of, let's see, where can we take less or divert less from the telecommunications fund? That was only my suggestion. Again, we are close. Again, we're just deciding on funding and how to fund that.
So we're talking basically the material impact is 10 months, 12 months, or 14 months, is that?
The 14 is a swag, but yes. So take 2 additional months to get to $2.3 million. And $2.3 million paid everything. That's after we paid everything that was on the list that Don gave us for all the aeration, the sunshades, the light
Parking lot.
poles, everything that we've talked about in the past would be paid for, done, and in 12 months or 14 months, we would again have $2.3 million in the fund.
In 12 months. Is that 12 months?
And-
One of the
and-
options was 12 months, yes.
Will we know what the construction companies expect as a draw? Because obviously, they're not going to expect 2.3 million from the get-go.
No, they won't.
So we need to not be, talking about what we're going to have depends a little bit upon how much they expect to draw over what period of time. And I don't think we have that
I
answer,
think the
do we?
only number that you would have difficulty with, it would be the last draw.
Right. But there would be more money available even at that last draw because of what accumulates in the telecommunications fund. Is that not correct? No?
For using it all.
Oh, I know we're using it all, but I'm saying if the project, and this is totally a guess, if shovels in the ground is January, it's going to take them until the following January or February to complete the project, I would think.
It's very, very possible that, if the project completion is February, March of 2021, it was an academic discussion.
Still have zero impact.
Right.
And frankly, 12 months before getting a construction manager is a bit ambitious. We're trying. I mean, we're working really, really hard to get this done as quickly as possible. But it's tight. I'm happy to take questions. I don't know if you guys feel like that's appropriate or not.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Kathy?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to have I can talk pretty loud.
Yeah, but we-
Okay. When we had the budget workshop, you all had asked every board member to give a consensus on 3% out of the CenturyLink and 3% increase for homeowners. And you had a couple that said, oh, I need to look at it like Ron did and stuff. Now, what happened? Now it's less than 1%, and then the rest goes out of the CenturyLink. So I'd like to know what happened between the end of the last workshop meeting and today.
Well, we did have some communication with construction managers that give us an estimate of soft costs and timelines. So that certainly has an impact. I'm looking very closely at the money we will need to complete the project because I personally don't want to raise assessments a penny more than we need to. And so that is why I moved up. But that's my answer, but I can't answer for the rest of the board.
I think that one of the answers is that we would like the clubhouse project to be something that is like 80% of the community thinks it's a good idea and signs on to it. So some of those that were against it, there'll be some that are not going to be in favor of it no matter what. But if we can soften the HOA fee increase to gain more participation and concurrence to allow the project to be an accepted thing, not just I have to put up with it because you're going to shove it down my throat. The purpose of this is to try to coalesce the community together so that we all are all on the same sheet of music and the same team. And if we can do that by using the telecommunications fund for most of this budget, show a nominal participation in an HOA fee increase, then I think we can accomplish both things.
Got another question? Rich? Wait a second. Rich, wait for a microphone. What? No,
No, you have to
we
use-
have,
Is the HOA fee that you're talking about for operating expenses or for the clubhouse?
Oh, no,
project
all
and the
operation.
parking lots?
Operating.
All operation.
So then why are you talking about?
Well, I don't know why we got onto this subject of the clubhouse, other than that
Exactly.
some
That's a
people
good
started
point.
asking questions. It has nothing to do with it.
So,
My question had nothing to do with the clubhouse.
No, in fact, the reason that the budget has gone up has nothing to do about the clubhouse. Those figures that we gave you on the 2020 budget are due to expense creep and operating increase in areas where we were deficient. That's why we're trying to generate money to raise that budget a little bit more than this year, so that we're not working day by day by day trying to figure out how to make sure we balance the budget.
so an HOA increase for operating expenses, not the clubhouse, you wouldn't be violating the original thing about the clubhouse, saying there won't be any increases because of the clubhouse.
No,
So you can raise the HOA $6.
we could,
We could raise it $33.
but we actually think that we can probably do it with this, what we've recommended.
which is less than $1 a month.
Right.
What would be wrong with having a little extra money, though? I mean, $1 a month? I don't think there's anybody in here that can't afford $1 a month. I think we were happy at the last budget workshop, as Kathy said, it was 3 and 3. Now all of a sudden, we're having 7 and less than 1 shoved at us. And I don't think it has anything to do with it. Plus, I think that no dues increase had a few things after it. There were other things after that, such as no dues increase if there wasn't more than a 3% inflation increase. There were other things to do with that that nobody has mentioned. Nobody has mentioned.
I could mention that when the initial presentation was done by Sean, and we transcribed the whole videotape, he was asked, was there going to be a dues increase? And I quote, no, not a dime.
But
So
he
we-
wasn't the board.
Well, he was
He
presenting the
wasn't the
project.
board. He was
He was the
not the
general
board.
manager.
And there were 3 things that were amendments to that no dues increase. And none of you have ever mentioned them. I'll look for them so that I can present them to all of you. But there are other concessions that have to do with that no dues increase that you're shoving at us.
Well,
That's not fair.
I think that's why we have looked at increasing the assessment. And we're working on a number here that makes sense, but we don't want to do it arbitrarily. We don't want to charge people extra money and tell them to pay extra money every month when it very likely won't be necessary.
So just take it out of the piggy bank
Well, it's
instead.
not a piggy
No
bank.
piggy bank.
No, it's not. That's the problem,
No, it's
Ron.
all,
It's
it's
not
all
a
your
piggy
money.
bank. But it's
It's
not a
everybody's
pig-
money that has been put aside for a project.
No, it was put aside originally to make sure the expansion happened first.
Well, it was put aside originally to protect it from Taylor Morrison. The
Correct.
expansion was subsequent to that. But I-
Right, but it
But I
was
think we're on the, I don't think we're very far apart is the point here.
I do. I do. Taking 7% is not acceptable.
Because we're talking about a difference of maybe 2 months maximum. And that could be academic because we don't know if we can even get the project done.
Marlene, can we let someone else have the microphone?
I
Thank
think
you
you're
very
trying to
much.
postpone it, and I think there's a reason for that.
Thank you. If I may, just so I'm clear on it, perhaps some other people would like to hear it the way I might state it. If I'm understanding it correctly, a couple of dollars added on the assessment, the remainder of it will be coming from the lockbox, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No, they'll, that the amount put into the lockbox will be reduced.
Understood.
They won't come
Understood.
out of the
I stand
lockbox.
corrected. I stand corrected. But we're square on the fact that the reduction will come from there, correct?
The reduction in the contribution, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What I'd like to know is what is going to be the impact in regards to the actual construction of the clubhouse improvement in regards to a time frame? Did you say 2 months you thought it would delay it by? That's correct? And then if I heard you correctly, Ron, you said that in your estimation, after the signing of a project manager, it would probably take about 12 months. Is that correct, to construct the building?
I said that would be a bit of a reach,
approximate.
but approximately,
An
yes.
approximate date. You're close to signing a construction project manager, isn't that correct?
Yes, but we'd
Close.
also, if I could, we also have to sign an architect at that point.
Understood.
And we've
Once
had,
again, I'm just trying to get
Sure,
this
of
clear in
course.
my mind, and if there's anybody who wants to add in, please do so.
well, that's
but-
the goal here, is clarity.
Okay. Is it fair to assume, and you know what happens when you assume, so I don't want to do that, but nonetheless, is it fair to discuss that between now and the election in March, all of the signings would be done in regards to project manager, architectural firm, and
Stop there.
contract?
Stop there.
I think
Well,
that's
let
a
me just
very,
finish my
I understand.
Between
I-
those two, it's fair to say, but you can't go beyond those two.
But I'll be here, I can tell you that, and I'm not changing my position on this. And I understand now why the concern over 2 months is, because it could be perceived that we're delaying 2 months because other board members come on that might not support the project. I can
Correct.
tell you personally,
Correct.
on my
That's what
word.
I was alluding
Of course,
to,
that's
but go
actually a
ahead.
very intelligent statement that I didn't even rationalize. I didn't think about that angle because it's not on my mind.
Go
But I
ahead.
can tell you that I would expect that the construction manager contract to be signed in the next week or two.
Okay.
And then within the next 30 days, the architect is going to be signed. So those are 2 contracts that we're putting money up front to pay.
That you have to abide by.
We have to abide by that.
And the new board that would be seated would have to abide by.
Absolutely.
I would say the train's rolling.
Okay.
That's not going to, I'm, like I said, I'm on the expansion committee, and I was charged with seeing this project through. And you will see me as an advocate of anything in that direction. But I can tell you personally, that is not my motivation in any capacity. I initially was not, I did not even want to be on the expansion project.
Okay.
But I was asked to be on it, and once I said that I would be on it, I wanted to see it to completion. And that's just me being 100% straightforward with you.
Would the other board members who are not up for re-election make that same statement, that they'd be?
Absolutely. That's when
Absolutely.
I
will
was
be-
put on the committee.
I will be exactly the same position that I said during my election. I fulfilled almost every one of my campaign promises, and one of them was to get an improvement built. And whether I'm on this board or somebody else is in this seat, I will be in that audience advocating to complete that building, not run into another $122,000. We have nothing to show for it.
Okay.
I can probably say that this board will commit to that once this, again, Don said the train's rolling.
And I put that on my bio in writing,
and
and
I think-
I appreciate you asking the question, because maybe that was the elephant in the room that I wasn't seeing.
And to be honest with you, and Marlene and everything, and maybe I was just being naive because, again, I'm laser focused. I didn't even think about a transition of the board. You may lose 4 board members and not get the building built. So, and that be brutally honest, I can't think that far because we're focused on doing exactly the task that's at hand. So you have my pledge that I will see this through fruition.
I'm glad we were asked this question, frankly.
And you got the same thing from me. I was put on the clubhouse
Excellent question.
improvement, not expansion committee. And I'm with Ron. I'll be here the same term, and we expect to see the clubhouse open and operating before we leave office.
I think it was great that you confirmed, too, that you'll have signed contracts in
Yeah.
hand between now and March voting
Right.
day.
Our,
And those funds will be allocated to those individuals to perform that task so that we will be moving forward and that train will stay on track.
no question.
And those funds will come out of the $1.9 million that we have in the bank today.
I guess lastly, the last thing I'll say about it, and I'll ask anybody else to add in whatever they like, I don't think anybody should be naive enough to think that we can do for 1.9 what we voted on
No.
2 years ago at 1.9.
Never
So
happened.
It's going to be more than 1.9.
No, it's not.
It's gonna,
No, it isn't.
It's gonna be smaller
The
than
building will be
13,000.
smaller.
I understand that, I understand that. The smaller building, though, at 1.9, in order to prepare it the way we wanted to prepare it, is going to be more than 1.9.
But we're not going to prepare it the way we wanted to prepare it. You're going to get what you can get.
I'm not phrasing it correctly, but
But we're going to
I
have,
understand
for-
your commitment to 1.9.
Yeah,
We're-
and it will be a smaller scale than what was originally thought it to be. But I think that everyone on this board has committed that not spending a dime for the construction of the building over 1.9.
but we will be doing workshops where we present everyone with what we believe would be the best bang for our buck. We'll have community input, and as a committee, we'll present it to the board, and we'll have to vote on it, and we're all going to go through this in a very open process, which I think will be good for everyone, frankly.
There's somebody back here.
I think one of the things I think that I'm getting confused with is we're talking about an assessment and then we jump right into this telecommunications one. You said that our budget, just our operational budget right now, has increased.
Yes.
So the increase, if you put an increase into the homeowner's assessment and the fee goes up a little bit, that should be based solely on, we have to do this because our budget's increased. The cost of running this place has increased. Not anything to do with the electronic, the communication funds that we've got put aside for the clubhouse. We had an increase, we had a raise in what it cost us to run this place, in salaries, in paper, in electronics. That's why we're looking for an increase, not for the clubhouse. And that's what needs to be made, clear to everybody. I don't think any of us expect that we're going to have a 11,000 square foot clubhouse built. Not now. There's no way it could be done. But if we have to raise homeowners' assessment fees, it should be because of the cost of running this.
Well, that's exactly what I said in my president's report.
And-
That's exactly why we need more funding to run the operation budget in 2020. Now we're to the funding of that, and I think that the proposals of 3 and 3, the proposals of all from the telecommunications, and then I think a compromise, which is a very modest compromise of the $2.92 increase. I think we need to go with it.
Higher, should be raised higher. You're absolutely right.
The problem is not everyone agrees it should be higher. You can't say that.
I also stated in
on.
my president's report that I would expect a 3% to 4% increase next year because
We're out of order. We shouldn't be communicating with the
Yeah,
crowd. We need to
When-
move on.
All right, then let's vote on a proposal and what we want to do.
I will make a motion that, and this is to help you with posting the budget tomorrow, that we increase our dues by $2.92, which is the number you gave earlier.
Per quarter.
Per quarter for assessment dues, and the remainder of the funding for our budget come from telecommunications.
Comes from a reduction in what we're currently collecting and putting into telecommunications.
True. Bill said it better. Did you hear it, Molly?
No, I did not. So would you please repeat? You have moved to, tell me again.
To increase quarterly assessments by $2.92 and to reduce the amount of our current quarterly assessments that go into telecommunications by an amount sufficient to fund the balance of the budget increase.
Okay, second the motion.
I'll second it because that's her motion.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I like sitting next to you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
4-3. But that's,
It carries.
I'm sorry, I need to know who voted for and who voted against. Those voting for, please, Bill? Marilyn? Don? And Ron? Against? Scott? Al? Molly? The motion carried.
And Jerry, this helps you with putting this on.
Is there any other resident comments? To the resident, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
second.
Okay.
Who seconded? I'm sorry.